Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our fourth episode of the Star Wars Hour, which is our Delinquents podcast off-branch, talking everything and all things about Star Wars, which is, of course, our main topic here today. We have some really cool stuff that we're going to be doing. I realize we have a little bit of an echo here, so hopefully that may have just fixed it. So, what's really important here today is The Mandalorian Episode 3. Now, of course, we had the Christmas special that was going on today, but we're going to be doing another video on that, or another podcast later on, hopefully, maybe like next week. We might do one sooner. Who knows? It just depends on how much we believe we can talk about it. But it is just going to be me today. So hopefully, we'll talk about this episode and, maybe go through some things that you didn't know, little Easter eggs, and kind of break down the episode and everything that you may have missed, some things you might not have missed, and kind of just going through all the things that we really enjoyed about it. So, obviously, we open up the episode with Din Djarin landing, which is, something that we saw in the opening scene of the trailer, which, I thought would be in one of the earlier episodes, but it actually turned out to be one of the later episodes. So it's still nice to see that there were certain things that, we're seeing in the trailers that are happening very quickly. A lot of the things, in fact, in the trailer happened within these first 3 episodes, so that's kind of nice to see. But we obviously have so many more episodes after this, so there's a lot of opportunity for things to be happening that we haven't seen. Obviously, we see the ship, the Crest, flying through space, damaged from the previous episode, which if you haven't seen it, and of course for this episode, spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, or previous episodes, definitely go watch those before listening to this. So you have been warned. But the Crest was damaged from the previous attack that it had with the creatures, we're going to call them little spider creatures, on the planet Prior. So, they're flying through space. He has to escort this creature to this planet, and that is what we drop on. And immediately we are thrown into the action with him crashing down onto the planet. If you pay attention, there's a little detail in there. There's condensation building up inside of the cockpit because of how damaged it is. Now, obviously, when we see in previous Star Wars movies or, things like that, we don't see that because of how well pressurized or how stable the actual cockpit is, and it shows just, these little details I think are really important that not a lot of people appreciate, but it's nice to see them putting in that extra effort, which I think, throughout this whole explaining of this episode, hopefully you'll come to understand that and kind of appreciate it a little bit more. Um, Obviously, then on his dashboard, you can see some things written in Arabic, which are basically like, danger. The landing platform's coming up. Slow down, things like that. So it's nice to see those little details. Obviously, they get right down, and right before they're about to hit it, he slows down, and we all think it's good, everything's okay, and then the crest, one of the engines blows, and it goes into the water. Now, the crane that picks up the crest looks like to me to at least to be like a broken down or refurbished, sorry, not broken down, refurbished is the word I meant to say, AT-AT, which is interesting because there's at least concept uh, out there of when they originally created the AT-AT walkers for The Empire Strikes Back. Lucas had taken some inspiration from actual like cranes from like harbors as inspiration for them. Now, obviously, they were used as vehicles of war in Episode 5, but in Rogue One, we see them used as actual hauling and like cargo holders. Now, obviously, they did have guns on them, so they were multi-purposeful, but we see them actually being used as something else besides just a machine of war, which is really interesting to see how certain things are refurbished and used for other things. But obviously, then they pick him back up. He gets out, and we see the creature that he was, the little frog creature that he was escorting. We see her reunite with her husband so they can go, get freaky and fertilize these eggs. So from there, Mando obviously gives this guy some credits to repair the crest while he's out in search of Mandalorian. He asks the little frogman about, finding out if there's any others that look like him, which leads him to this bar where he's told that he can get some information. Now, there's a couple different creatures on this planet. Now, it's an aquatic planet, and we've seen these creatures before. So there's the Mon Calamari, which is the species that looks like Admiral Akbar. Uh, and there is also the other group of people who is, I'm trying to think of what their name is. Um, Gosh, I can't think of what their name is for the life of me. Um, but the other people that are there, besides the Mon Calamari, are sorry, they're the Korans. That's what they are. So they're the Korans. Are the other species that are there, and he's told that by one of these Korans that he can lead him to more of his kind. And so we're then led from there, from this bar scene where Baby Yoda has some food, finally, instead of having to eat some eggs, which is not good, obviously. And, a little face hugger from what looks like Alien pops up, a little squidding, like attaches to his face. And it's funny because Din just tells him, stop playing with your food. And it's like, I think the food is playing with him. I think it's the other way around, Din. But he leaves the child with them and then moves on. So from there, we're led to this scene where Din is on this boat, which actually, to me, looks like a refurbished Hammerhead class Corvette. Which, if you go back, it's been used in many different films and things like that in the Clone Wars series, I believe, definitely in Rebels. But most noticeably, if you haven't seen the TV shows, certainly you've seen the movies. In Rogue One, Admiral Raddus uses his Hammerhead class Corvette to ram the Star Destroyers, and he kind of like crashes them into each other at the Battle of Scarif. So that's this. It looks like to me like that. Now, obviously, I feel like it isn't because it's pretty small, but you can see the resemblance in certain designs that they have from that planet. These, two species that they use that kind of same design in the ships, which I think is a really nice touch, of course. Um, Now he's on this boat, and he's starting to ask some questions, And one of the Quarians, who obviously has to be the leader, says that they need to feed this little beast that's, I guess, being held inside the boat or underneath the boat, something. Um, and so they open up this hatch and they're about to feed it some food, and they do that. And he tells them to get a closer look, and then he swats Baby Yoda into the water, and Baby Yoda is sucked up by this little sea creature. And so, obviously, this is a betrayal on their part. So, it was a pretty cool scene to see. Din immediately jumps into the water to try and save Baby Yoda, and they trap him in there. And the goal for them was to get his Beskar armor. And I feel like a reoccurring theme, obviously, throughout this is not only is he just hunted because of who he is, but the armor that he carries puts an even greater bounty on his head. So, obviously, not having that armor would have put him in some more difficult situations, and it's definitely saved him a lot in the past. But the armor really kind of 50-50 here, in my opinion, does 50% good and 50% bad. I mean, this 50% of drawing all this attention and, all these people trying to kill him literally just for his armor is absolutely crazy. And I'd love to see to what degree getting just one piece of that Beskar armor is actually worth. But so he's trapped in the water, or underneath the cage in the water. And it looks like all hope is lost, but then we see some figures drop down onto the boat and start kicking their butt. Kicking the Quarren's butts, at least. And it turns out that they're Mandalorians. So instead of him finding the Mandalorians found him. So kind of works out that way. It was pretty cool. This, of course, is a pretty short episode. I do have to say the runtime is about, I believe it's in the 30 minutes mark. So compared to the first episode, which was at the 50 minutes mark, and then the next episode, which was in the 40s, this is now in the 30s, which goes back into what Shane and I were talking about last time, where, obviously, we appreciate, when you have that flexibility room to be able to tell the story in the amount of time that you feel is necessary. That's great. But, when we're looking forward to these things, I'd at least like to have a 40 to 45 minute episode, without credits, at least. I'd like to at least have a 40 to 45 minute episode. I feel like that's a good runtime. But, if they feel like that's what, they need to tell the story, then I trust them. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni obviously have crafted masterful pieces. Dave Filoni, absolutely brilliant. So is Jon Favreau. And I feel like they really tried to service the fans, which is great. Compared to some people, not to say names, but we all know who it is. So then, obviously, he is saved by them. They pull him out of the water, and they try to see if he's okay, and he starts talking about the child. There's 3 Mandalorians that came to save him. One jumps in the water to get Baby Yoda, and we see a lot of blaster firing underneath the water. And the Mandalorian emerges victorious with Baby Yoda in its arms. But the little canister that he's in is all dented and busted up, and it was like, oh my gosh. I thought for a second, I was like, oh god, no, Baby Yoda's going to be dead. And when he actually was eaten, the first thought that went through my mind was, oh my gosh, no way they're going to just get rid of him right now. And then, it was a thought that went through my head, and then I was like, nah, he just makes too much money for them to do that. But so they just, they brought him out of the water, and, these Mandalorians looked familiar to most Star Wars fans. As long as you've seen the Clone Wars, or Rebels, you would recognize these Mandalorians. These 3 Mandalorians are a part of the clan of Night Owls, which was created by by Bo-Katan. And turns out the hooded figure that we see earlier in the episode, as well as the same hooded figure that we saw in the trailer, is Bo-Katan. So I'm absolutely thrilled that I was correct on that, and that it was potentially going to be Bo-Katan. So this is really cool. Now, obviously, what happens next is she takes off her helmet, and this shocks Din. Now, I'm going to explain this in a minute, why this is important, but I'm going to continue on. But, obviously from here, he's a little shocked that she took her helmet off, and he says, "You're not a Mandalorian. Where did you get that armor?" Which is something similar that he said to the man from the Marshal in the second episode. Um, so, these are all, uh, I'm sorry, into first episode, my bad. Um, going from that moment where the Marshal took off the helmet, he seemed a little shocked, but more, just from looking at him, I'm sure he could tell that this wasn't necessarily a Mandalorian by the way he walked. He looked more like a gunslinger. Not that, Jango Fett, Boba Fett, or Din aren't gunslingers, but this looked like a Western gunslinger, so I doubt he was too worried about it, and probably felt immediately that this wasn't a Mandalorian. But you could see in this episode, episode 3, that these warriors were very skilled and highly trained, and they've obviously been working together. So he potentially probably thought that they were Mandalorian, obviously because of their skill. Mandalorians are very skilled warriors, and then she takes her helmet off, and that shocks me even more because I'm sure he thought in his mind that these are Mandalorians, in case they are. And so he says that you're not Mandalorian, and the gentleman in the back, whom I don't know his name, we're gonna call him Heavy, just cause we're gonna call him Heavy, our big guy. Okay. He says that he is one of the children of the Watch, or a Watcher. So this is what I was saying is actually important. What we need to explain. Now, obviously, in the first season, we see kind of like the origin stories and kind of like some brief moments, which was mainly to explain why Din was so afraid and untrusting of droids. But now we see it as, going back on this, and there's more to it of these Mandalorians who had saved him from the droid attacks. Now, the people, the clan that had rescued him, if you see their insignia on their left shoulder, just like how the Night Owls had their insignia on their left shoulder, they were a part of the Watch. Now, the Watch was a group of Mandalorians who had split from Mandalore after the Great Purge, because they wanted to have reform, and they believed in the old ways of the Mandalorians, which was that, you didn't take your helmet off. It was not that it wasn't, as closely knit of a brotherhood and sisterhood, but it was definitely more, I would say, strict on its ruling and how you had to live your life. So Din grew up in that atmosphere, so that's what he's pretty much used to. So seeing these, I would call them reformed Mandalorians, uh, obviously shocked him. But I think as time goes on, he's going to be more comfortable and more accepting of these ways, and I feel like hopefully he'll transition to being more of a reformed Mandalorian, where he's not afraid to take his helmet off, and he's more, in tune with some of the newer things. And the Watch was also a part of Death Watch, but obviously after the Purge, they split off. So if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, you definitely should. I believe, off the top of my head, that arc may have been in season 3 or 4. We see a little bit in more depth in adding on to that story line in season 7 with Ahsoka going to Mandalore and helping Bo-Katan take back Mandalore. Which, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, you 100% should. It's amazing. All the people there at LucasArts and Dave Filoni did a wonderful job crafting such a masterful series, and it truly was amazing. You are going to have to get over the animation of the first few seasons, and season 7 just looks totally different. But obviously a really great series nonetheless. Now, something that needs to be said, if you don't understand who Bo-Katan is, I'll give you kind of a brief background on her. So, Bo-Katan part of Death Watch, which was the clan on Mandalore. Now they kind of held the power until Darth Maul came and took over Mandalore. Which obviously that whole arc was really sad. I don't want to spoil anything. There's a lot of sadness and a lot of trials in that arc. It's one of my favorites, actually, probably from the Clone Wars. I don't know if Shane and I had mentioned that in one of our previous episodes, if that was part of one of our favorite arcs or not. But she left after Darth Maul took over. Her sister is Duchess Satine, who was the ruler of Mandalore uh, at the time until she was dethroned. And after she left, she created the Night Owls, who then kind of rebelled against Death Watch, who was then obviously controlled by Darth Maul. And then we're led into season 7, where that shifting in power is changed, and Sabine is now taking over as the new ruler. Now, if we go on to Rebels, which is a series that takes place, I believe it's between 5 ABY. I'm sorry, 5 BBY and 0 BBY. So obviously, if you haven't listened before, that means before the Battle of Yavin. It's kind of like AD or BC, before Christ, after death, or BCE in the Star Wars universe. So that takes place shortly before Episode 4. Now, what happens in Rebels is she is on a quest to get the Darksaber. Now, if you don't know what the Darksaber is, it's a lightsaber that was crafted by a Mandalorian Jedi, and it's a one-of-a-kind saber. And after that Jedi's death, the Jedi Council held on to that lightsaber until it was stolen back by the Mandalorians and then used as a sign of ruling and power. So that is why she wanted to get that, so that way it is clear that she is the ruler. So it's just basically a sign of power for her. So from there, as far as we know, she actually obtains this through Sabine Wren, who is a character in Rebels, which, again, if you haven't seen Rebels, definitely go and watch that. I've just started watching it myself. I've seen little snippets, so I understand a lot about the series, but not a lot in depth. There's so many great things to uncover about that series. So from there, also, if you guys would like to see that, I'd be more than happy to do some reviews and talk about certain things that are in there. If you have any things that you'd like to know, definitely leave them in the comments for our YouTube video, which will be up. You can also leave them while we're streaming on Twitch. This is live every single time, and then it is uploaded to Spotify, as always, and then after that, it's uploaded to YouTube the day after. So, Din is obviously, going back to the episode, Din is looking for answers, in which hopefully these Mandalorians can help him. He explains that he is tasked with taking the child to its kind, which are the Jedi. And obviously to him, they're the Jedi, from what I understand and what it seems like his understanding. Obviously, they're a great race of, air quotes, sorcerers to them. But obviously to Sabine, she knows. Sorry, not to Sabine. To Bo-Katan, she knows that they're not just sorcerers, that they're, Force users, and what they actually are and what they're classified as. So her perspective on the Jedi is obviously different than Din's. And also, obviously Ahsoka helped her, so she thinks very positively of the Jedi, at least. And so she asks him for his help in a heist of an Imperial cruiser. So that is what we're led into next, which this was actually a very great scene, and I got lost, and I totally didn't feel like I was in a 30-minute episode at this point, and I was like, oh my god, this is actually amazing. Like, I feel like like so much stuff is happening. By the end of the episode, I was like, oh my god, 30 minutes has gone by. Like I feel like there like so much was happening, and I just kind of like lost track of time. And so don't let it deter you, even though it is a 30-minute episode. Now, one thing that I do want to point out now, obviously in this scene in the bar where they're talking about the heist, um, Din and Bo have this conversation, and I'm going to try and quote this as best as I can. Din says, when talking about Mandalore, and because the heist is about seizing the weapons, because it's an Imperial cruiser, they want to seize the weapons to reclaim their homeworld of Mandalore. To which Din says, that planet is cursed. Anyone who goes there dies. Once the Empire realized they couldn't control it, they made sure no one else could either. Which Bo responds to, "Don't believe everything that you hear." So, from what I understand, the Empire was using propaganda to discourage any Mandalorians from returning, which actually goes back to a reference that Moff Gideon said in the finale of season 1, where he said, "The Night of a Thousand Tears," which is obviously about the Great Purge, and a lot of death and just destruction happened on the side of the Mandalorians, which discouraged them from coming. Um, so then we're led into this heist, right? So the freighter that is actually used is called a Gazanti freighter, and it's actually a familiar freighter if you didn't know this, and it's not something that most people would know. But we've seen that freighter before, not only in uh, a series, but in the movies as well. So actually, in Episode 1, when Qui Gon, Padme, Jar Jar go on to Mos Espa, you can see them as they're walking in. There's a freighter flying in the background. It's kind of like a maroon color freighter. That's actually the same freighter used in this episode. I'm sure it kind of looks, a little bit more advanced now, and it's been, kind of dolled up, and it looks something like what the Empire would use with the color scheme. It was used in Rebels and the Clone Wars, so just pay attention and you'll see it in there. Now, um, there isn't too many details I want to get into about them getting onto the ship. Obviously, it's only four of them. They land, they start kicking stormtrooper butt. They believe it's like 10 to 20 individuals on the ship, and so they do a scan and they realize it's only four people. So they're freaking out a little bit. I will say it was pretty funny. There was a officer who is actually a comedian, and I don't know his name. I've definitely seen some of his stuff, but I can't think of it. Um, he was playing one of the officers who was saying that they had trapped the intruders in the control room, which you could see when the captain was said to him in the control room. He said, "Yeah, we have them trapped." And then you see the cargo bay doors open, and all of them get sucked out. And it was a great moment. It truly was hilarious. And it's nice to see them add little touches like that. So it's not entirely serious, but they have some funny moments. Um, Now, another thing that was really great. So they're pushing up and they're trying to get to the cockpit, where they're kind of stopped and they're kind of at a point where they can't move any further because there's a lot of Imperials in front of them. It's interesting to see how durable the actual Beskar armor is. Because Din, charges forward. They can't do anything, as the other Mandalorians like Bo-Katan and the other Night Owls they don't have Beskar armor, so their armor would still, they could take a beating, but when you have heavy repeating blasters and the E11s, there's not much that their armor is going to do about that. So you can see kind of their fighting as well, that they rely on each other, whereas Din is more of kind of like the lone wolf. He kind of is more defensive, in his fighting, to where they're more offensive together. And if they can't push something, then it's going to be difficult for them to go. So when he kind of just charges ahead and has those detonators and kind of just, is tanking all of those shots, you can really see how durable the armor is. I don't believe there's any dents. I don't believe, there's really anything, which kind of, brings into the question of, obviously, if it's that strong, then it must be worth a lot. I know that Phasma's armor from episode 8 was also durable, and from what I understand, now I want to tie this in, is, you see it, uh, tanking a few pistol shots from a pistol, and it kind of just grazes off. But I don't believe it was Beskar armor. From what I understand, it was actually remnants from the Death Star, which makes me question, like, okay, well, there's obviously some things that are very durable, like that armor, which had Phasma had, and Beskar armor. It'd be interesting to see which one is actually stronger than the other. But then, we're led into, getting into the cockpit, at which the captain is contacted by Moff Gideon, where he tells him, that he needs reinforcements, and he asks where they are, and he says it's too late for that, and tells him, "Long live the Empire." At which, you could see this captain knew that, he basically had to take the ship down, and didn't even question his pilots. He just kind of shot them. So, which was kind of a bummer. Obviously they were pretty scared, and I guess, they had a quick death, which is nice. But obviously they get up to the front, and this is where some things are kind of more, important to the actual storyline and overarching themes of the series. Is Bo-Katan, even though she doesn't say it outright, her goal is to get back the Darksaber. Now, we don't know how she lost it, because by the end of Rebels, which obviously takes place before this and before the end of the original trilogy, she is in possession of the Darksaber. So somehow she loses it, and obviously she needs to get it back, probably to unify the Mandalorian people to then try and reclaim Mandalore, which is obviously what they're doing the heist for as well. So getting weapons and getting information, she asks the captain, where he is, where Moff Gideon is, if he has it. And he said, if you're asking that question, then you already know the answer. To which he basically just takes an electric cyanide capsule. I don't really know. Which is interesting. It was never a thought that crossed my mind for someone to have one of those. And I don't think that's anything that we've seen in Star Wars itself. Uh, so it's kind of interesting to see that. The first thought that came to mind actually was from Captain America, the first Avenger, when the Hydra agent bit the cyanide capsule. So it's interesting to see, obviously, like, it electrocutes him, so I'm sure it just kind of like fried his brain, which I think is a terrible way to die. But maybe it's quicker than a cyanide capsule, who knows? And then Din and one of the other Night Owls then save the ship from crashing. And the episode kind of just wraps up from there, of Bo and the other Night Owls leaving with the freighter that they just took with all of the weapons, and them offering for him to come with them and join them. But he tells them that he has a job to do, and he needs to know where the Jedi are. To which Bo tells him that he can find a certain Jedi on a planet. And this was something that we were, speculating. Obviously, there was rumors, and it was pretty much confirmed that Ahsoka was going to be in here somehow. But they 100% confirmed it when Bo-Katan had said that you can find Ahsoka on the Force planet of Corvus in the city of Colodan. I think that's how you pronounce it, at least. So, and you got to realize at this point, so to kind of give you a recap of what happened and how Rebels ended. So obviously, if you haven't seen Rebels, skip this part and just kind of go on. But to kind of wrap up how Rebels ended, um, Ezra kind of sacrificed himself to take out Admiral Thrawn, and he gets on these. The ship is taken into like a hyperspace or light speed by these like creatures, which I think is actually just absolutely brilliant, and it's so cool that they can do that. And there's creatures that can travel at light speed. Um, but and the last thing we see is them zipping off to an unknown destination. And she's saying that Sabine Wren is saying this, that Ezra is still out there and it's time to bring him home. And we see her walking towards Ahsoka, who has a hood on, and she has this cane, and she obviously looks wiser. She looks like a gray Jedi to me. Um, and I haven't seen all of the all of Rebels, so I'm not entirely sure if she still has her lightsabers by the end of the series. I'm assuming she does, because prior to that, she had kind of cut herself off from the Force to protect herself from being hunted. Obviously after Order 66, but with that ending and the rebellion starting, um, I think that she still is a Force practitioner, and I'd assume, probably just on the low. Maybe she's on the planet doing some stuff, but I think we'll get into that when I talk about kind of my predictions for the next episode. But he tells her that he can find her on that planet, to which they leave, and he gets back to his ship, which looks like absolute dog piss, and it's terrible. It's like there's strings everywhere, and he's like, I gave you 1,000 credits, and this is the best you could do, and he just kind of like shrugs it off. You see him climb in, and it's like it's held together by like just bits and pieces. And he takes off, gets into space, and we see him hop into light speed, and a little piece of the crest actually just breaks off, and it shows you just kind of how fragile the actual ship is. It'd be cool to see if he got like a new ship. I think that'd be really cool. I think honestly, if Boba Fett does come back into the picture, it'd be cool to see him like obtain the slave 2. I think that'd be awesome. I think that'd be so cool. And then he could refurbish it and make it into the slave 3. So kind of going off topic, and going into our predictions, because that's the end of the episode, right? So we've kind of recapped it. Obviously, where he's headed and where the story seems to be taking us is towards finding Ahsoka. Now, some things I want to mention. Now, obviously we can tell Baby Yoda is very strong in the Force, and he's about 50 years old. Certain things that I think need to be understood is, I believe, just the species of which Baby Yoda is, I think they're just very in touch with the Force. I mean, Yaddle was a member of the Jedi Council. Obviously, Yoda is a member of the Jedi Council. And if we go back to episode 1, when they're talking about Anakin's midichlorian count, he says not even Master Yoda's is that high. So that means that Yoda's is obviously very high when it comes to being in touch with the Force and having that higher midichlorian count. So it'd have to be assumed that, any of these people from their species, which we don't know the name of their species yet, maybe Yodians or something like that, Yaddlans, they're obviously very, very in touch with the Force. So kind of going on from there, taking him to Ahsoka. Now, certain things that I think need to be kept in mind. Obviously, we know of Ahsoka, and we don't know her fate after Rebels and things like that. We know that she's alive after Episode 6, obviously, because Din is going to be going to her. Whereas, we have a period of time where Luke is training a new generation of Jedi, and we don't know what that planet is, I believe, where he is training those Jedi. So it'd be interesting to see if, obviously, Mark Hamill, he can come back and join, the series, but I feel like he's a little too old to be playing that younger Luke Skywalker. I think there's a lot of options of people who could play him. I think, honestly, Sebastian Stan, and I will say it again and again. I think he would be an amazing Luke Skywalker. He doesn't look too different facially from Luke. I think a lot of people just need to be open to having someone else play him. I think that was the big problem with Star Wars Solo. Um, I think a lot of people were against it because it wasn't Han Solo. Like, you have to realize Harrison Ford's an old man. He can't just time travel and go and do it. I thought that Aiden did a great job as Han Solo, actually. So it was honestly one of my favorite movies. I liked Solo more than I liked The Last Jedi. Don't get me wrong, still love The Last Jedi, but it's ranked higher on my list, which is obviously an unpopular opinion, I think. Um, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe, Ahsoka was helping uh, Luke. I mean, it would be sad to see if Kylo Ren had killed Ahsoka. I doubt that would happen. I feel like Ahsoka's just way too skilled for Kylo to kill her uh, in that kind of a situation. But maybe she is looking for force sensitives as well on the planet. Maybe she's starting something of her own. Who knows? Obviously there's a lot of room to kind of speculate what's going to be happening from there on out with her and where she's been. I mean, obviously there's been about 9 years of things that she could have been doing. Like, why is she on a force sensitive planet? These are all questions that are really important. So but that's kind of what I think. I think that he's gonna find her, and then hopefully she'll help him and not just throw Baby Yoda like Luke did with the lightsaber. And hopefully she'll help him and take the child in. But if that's the case, and he kind of leaves her with Baby Yoda, where does the arc kind of go from there? Maybe retaking Mandalore, or something like that. I definitely think Bo-Katan is gonna come back. I'd love to see Boba Fett come back in some sort of capacity, but I feel like it might have just been a quick little nod, a little fan service. But I guess we'll see. So I think that's pretty much gonna wrap it up for this podcast. I've actually really enjoyed this. I haven't done a solo podcast before, but I think it's something really nice. It's a nice chance for me to talk and kind of get some thoughts off here on what I think is going to be happening in the future of Star Wars. I'm obviously very excited. I hope everyone is going to be watching the Lego Star Wars special tonight on Disney Plus. If you're not, please go watch that. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. But other than that, thank you guys for listening. This is, of course, going to be up on Spotify very soon. It'll also be up on YouTube. One thing I do want to say, we will be starting a brand new podcast, which is going to be separate from the Delinquents, as that is something that we want to have as a separate entity. So it's going to be called the Twin Sons Podcast, and we're super excited to be starting that. We're not sure exactly when we're going to be starting it, but hopefully we'll be starting it soon. So definitely, please show your support. Come out, give some opinions. We'd love to talk about some of the things that you guys would love to know. And we can kind of go from there. But thank you guys for watching, or thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and have a great day.